Hey guys, it's Woody the Unexceptional Gamer, and I thought I'd just ramble on a little bit about networking as it relates to gaming. So here's the deal. First I'm going to cover bandwidth versus latency. Sometimes I hear people say, hey, I have a 100 megabit download. I should have a really good connection to the host. But that's not really how it works. There are two things you need to know. Bandwidth and latency. And ladders are my nemesis. So back on topic. Bandwidth is how much, say, water can flow through a hose. You know, compare a garden hose to a fire hose. That fire hose is just an expert at transporting tons of water from one place to another, whereas the garden hose, not so much. On the other hand, latency is how long it takes that, air quotes, water to flow from one side of the hose to the other. They're kind of related, but if you only have a minimal amount of water that needs to flow, as is the case in gaming, you're better off having, being close to the host. You're better off having a really low latency connection than having a really big bandwidth connection. So just as a hypothetical, in the old days, satellite internet was a viable competitor. And the downside to it was that with satellite internet, latency was terrible. The amount of time it took for the message to get from one side to the other was really slow. So while if you wanted to download a movie, satellite internet was better than, say, the early days of cable. It wasn't so hot if you had to do stuff where, you respond really quickly. Like gaming, for example, where how long it takes your traffic to arrive is super important. How long it takes your traffic to arrive, that's what latency is. So, not the greatest gameplay, but I think I played the objective real hard. Anyway, so, bandwidth versus latency. Latency is how long it takes your message to get there. Bandwidth is how much data it can push. Bandwidth matters when you're uploading videos. Latency matters when you're playing video games. More topics to cover. Open, strict, NAT types. Let's talk about stuff like that. So, here's the deal. Your computer has an address, and everyone sort of gets that it has an IP address, and that much is cool. Okay. In addition to the IP address, it has these port numbers. And, imagine like you're sending letters, to a house or a computer. That would be its IP address. Who's listening for that letter? That's the port. And, on some ports you've got your web browser listening. On other ports you may have an IM client listening. On some other port you may have, I don't know, music streaming or something like that. That's what the ports are all about. And if for some reason your Xbox can't communicate on one of these ports, like data's just getting stopped along the way, then your NAT type isn't open. Contrary to popular belief, having a NAT type that isn't open doesn't really directly impact how well your bullets register in a game like Call of Duty. Instead, certain services just flat out won't work. Like you might not be able to talk to some of your friends. You won't be able to join some games. That's what happens when your NAT type isn't open. Things are either on or off. One thing that might happen though is you'll probably rarely pull host if you don't have a NAT type of open. So in that respect, it can impact your, how well your bullets register. But for the most part, it's really an on or off thing. If you can't hear your friends talk, you probably have some sort of issue with a port not being open like you want it to be. There's a bug, at least on the Xbox and Black Ops, where sometimes you get kicked off and your NAT type gets switched to moderate. If that's the case, you can reboot your Xbox, or even easier if you're, Xbox savvy, you can you go and retest your connection, and then that process of testing it sets your NAT type back to open. So anyway, the NAT type. A lot of people have a misconception about that. What it's really about is being able to use all the services. And one of the big reasons that people don't have an open NAT type is that they have two routers. Like they might have a router from their cable people, and then they put another router behind it. Maybe the cable one they give you doesn't have a wireless router in it or something, so you put a router behind your router. Now that you have two of those things, it's called a double NAT, and with that you can't have sometimes you don't have an open port. If you're buying a new router, maybe you're not particularly tech savvy and you need to have an open NAT type, and your port forward and stuff like that isn't working for you, then one thing to look for in your router is UPnP, right? Universal plug and play. But instead of saying end play, they just use like the letter end. Get it? You know, UPnP. And that will sort of like automatically configure. Most modern routers have it. And that's why if you just have one router, everyone just sort of works. It's naturally open. You don't have to port forward. You don't have to put your Xbox in the DMZ or anything like that. It just kind of goes. So if you're buying a new router to solve your, strict NAT problem, then get one with UPnP, only use one router, and you're just about guaranteed to be fine. So what else can we talk about for networking? If you do want to set up port forwarding, your NAT type isn't open now and you don't have the scratch for a new router to fix the problem, then go to portforward.com, look up your router, and it will tell you which ports you need for Xbox, PS3, or PC, and for your game of choice, and you'll be in good shape. So anyway, portforward.com is a great resource for getting an open NAT on your router. Anyway, if you guys have questions, things I didn't cover, leave them in the comments, and maybe I'll make a follow-up to this. But I just thought I'd talk about it. Have a good day. If you liked the video, be sure to click like. If you're new around here, click subscribe on the two right. And, sometimes I like to recommend which video you should watch, and I'm not quite sure. If you just enjoy fun gameplay commentary, the one on the left turned out pretty well. It was well received. And the one on the right, though, if you're having trouble with your PS3 freezing while you play Black Ops, be sure to check that out. I think it might help. Bye.